All right, then. Let's see, is that good? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. So this evening, I wish to do another book recommendation video to show you some of the books within my library. And we're going to make this as brief as possible. And I have brought along my Librarian cup. Librarian's the original search engine. So I'm going to be recommending some books that I think will be beneficial for you intellectually as well as religiously. So I have some religious books set on the side and some books on history as well as philosophy. So can everyone hear me pretty well? Is it okay? How's the sound? Just want to make sure that everything's fine. I also do apologize. I look rather fatigued. It's because I am. I don't get much sleep these days. And also a quick update for some of you. I will be attending another Hamza's Den on Friday, inshallah. So I'll be doing an update on that very soon as well. So let's begin, shall we? Because I think that we'll get into this, right? So let's start with philosophy. Yeah, philosophy. Okay, so one of the first books that I really want to recommend is by William Barrett. It's called Irrational Man. And this book was really good in the sense that when I first read this in undergraduate years, it really got me interested in learning the other side of philosophy, what we call existentialism. Okay. So a lot of people have very negative perception of existentialism. However, the existentialism that Muslims are usually exposed to is typically of an atheistic variety. And this book is very fascinating in that it's written so well that it's basically a primer on existentialism, and it discusses both the atheistic and theistic side of the philosophy. So it goes into Kierkegaard quite a bit. So it showcases all of the elements of existentialism. And existentialism is really about, it's not so much about like proofs and logic and things like that. It's more about like trying to understand man's experience with himself. Okay, so generally perceive purpose of their existence, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very fascinating from that sense. And I think it's good if you want to understand existentialism a little bit better, so you can have a more informed opinion about the subject. And I think this is the best primer on the subject of existentialism. Okay, so I'm going to put this one away. I think we're done with that one. All right, then. Another one that I think is really good. Now, many of you have seen me recommend this in the past. Did I recommend this in the first video? I don't think I did. Did I? I don't think so. But anyways, Pragmatism, a New Name for Some Old Ways of Thinking by William James. This is the first real introduction to pragmatism from the Anglo-American perspective, although he would argue that pragmatism is, and he even goes in explaining how pragmatism is also helpful for the religious individual, in that it explains things better than most analytical philosophies and continental philosophies. And it discusses basically just the basic ideas behind pragmatism. So if you want to understand where I'm coming from when I say like I'm a pragmatist philosopher, this is a good way to introduce yourself to the philosophy of pragmatism. Okay, let's continue. Oh, some of you were mentioning this in the last stream, and I thought I'd pull it out just to impress you, right? So I have here by Allama Dr. Muhammad Iqbal, The Reconstruction of Religious Thought in Islam. I read this a long time ago, still have it. It's a very old book, actually, as you can tell. And yeah, it's very fascinating. I don't agree with all of his ideas, but I really admire his coherence and his level of thinking. He studied philosophy in the UK, I believe. Was it? Yes, in the United Kingdom. And he's more of a Kantian, if anything. He tries to involve Kantian philosophy into Islam and tries to explain Islam through Kantianism. So I don't agree with a lot of it, but I do think it's a very fascinating read. I think it's actually quite well translated as well, and I think that it'd be interesting just for you to read it. You don't have to agree with it, obviously, but I think that I think it'll open your mind at least towards understanding his thinking, as well as some Muslims' perspectives towards philosophy and how we can use philosophy to sort of better our tradition, sort of understand our tradition, at least the speculative portions of that, right? So, like I said, I do recommend reading it just to sort of get yourself become aware of his thinking and where he was coming from during that period of time, and how why a lot of people admire him for his thinking. So that's one. And finally, for philosophy, I'd like to discuss this book by Akbar Ahmed. It's Postmodernism and Islam, Predicaments and Promises, and it discusses the contemporary condition of the world, how postmodernism affects the Muslim mind, as well as, well, primarily the media. In fact, I actually quoted this book in my lecture series on information literacy. I do highly recommend it. It's actually kind of hard to find. I think you can find the PDF very easily, but if you want to get a physical copy, I'd recommend it as well. It's well written. There are a lot of things in here that I agree with, especially with his examination of Western media and Western culture and how it affects Muslims. But he is also very balanced. He doesn't just attack the West in here. He actually attacks Muslim societies as well for sort of succumbing to liberal mentalities, but also sort of abandoning our own tradition. And this is also the reason he sort of says, well, this is the reason really why that Western society, Western culture is controlling Muslims, is not because really of Western society's own power, but because Muslims themselves have sort of succumbed to it by our own volition, right? So I think this is a really good book if you want a very comprehensive look at contemporary issues. So, especially with respect to the media. All right then. Oops, almost dropped some books here. Okay, so let's keep moving along here. All right, I got a lot of stuff on my desk. Let's go into history. I think history is nice. I like history, right? So this is also a book that I recommended on my on my information literacy course. So here is a book by Rosie Bashir called Archive Wars. And this is actually a really fascinating book. And it's the politics of history in Saudi Arabia. And she really discusses how Saudi Arabia, at least the current regime, controls its own history and its own narrative by essentially deleting archives and also historical sites and only preserving some portions of those things in order to teach its own version of history. And she uses this as a primary example because a lot of societies in the past have done this as well, by deleting history, by sort of developing their own societies on the basis of their own narratives of the past, by deleting what actually happened or preserving only certain portions of it. So this is a really fascinating, it's very thick, actually, very big book. It's really well written. I highly recommend it if you're interested in understanding how Saudi Arabia, the current political regime, operates. Excuse me, and also why this sort of retelling of history is very dangerous, because it controls contemporary politics. So whoever controls history can actually control current society, and that's what she's trying to teach. So very fascinating book. Okay, whoops, put it over here. All right, so I also recommend this one in my information literacy course. And I'm not going to say the name out loud, but you can read it yourself. And I do apologize for the title, but it's not my fault. And unfortunately, like I said, a lot of Muslims don't write about these things. So non-Muslims write about them, so they get to choose what they want to write. So anyways, this is about New York Times bestseller. It's the Bad Blank Librarians of Timbuktu. For those of you who've watched my lectures on this book, you already know the value of it. But essentially, for those who haven't, it teaches about the heroics of Abdul Haidara with respect to what happened in Timbuktu a couple of years back, where Al-Qaeda invaded Timbuktu, essentially occupied it, and was trying to burn down manuscripts and other government things. And these librarians actually saved a lot of ancient manuscripts and books. And it really explains the value of their contribution and also the value of these manuscripts and what they did, and gives you a newfound appreciation for what librarians do. Yeah, I think it's a really good book to read. It reads like a fiction novel, but it's actually just really good in general. Okay, so I'm going to put this one away. What else? Oh, this one's a lovely book. Finally, last one in history. I like this one a lot. A lot of people haven't mentioned this book, and I don't know why, because it's really good. So, The Enlightenment Quran by Ziad al-Mursafi. Excuse me. The Politics of Translation and Construction of Islam. Now, what this book is about, don't be mistaken by the title, is that it discusses how the Quran was used by Enlightenment philosophers during the period of Enlightenment, and Enlightenment thinkers in general. And what he goes to show in here, what he proves in here, is that even though there's a myth that that the Enlightenment period was against religion, that wasn't actually the case. The Enlightenment period was against established Christianity, political Christianity, right? Institutionalized Christianity. And in fact, many enlightened thinkers actually complemented and promoted Islamic ideas by utilizing Islamic references against the church, believe it or not. Even atheists were actually more fond of Islam than they were of Christianity in many respects. So he actually quotes a number of sources from a lot of Enlightenment thinkers who actually quoted the Quran in order to refute Christians and the Christian establishment at the time. Okay, so yeah, this is an interesting read, and I truly recommend it because it kind of destroys this myth that religion was, that people were against religion during the Enlightenment, when really reality is that they weren't. They were just against Christianity, but they actually used Islam a lot in order to rebuke Christians. So that's actually quite fascinating. So I think you should definitely pick this up, especially if you want to look into the history of the Enlightenment with respect to Islam. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so that's good. So I think we went through history and philosophy. Let's look at religion. Okay. I didn't have any fiction books today. Maybe next time I'll do fiction. So this one is also recommended in my information literacy course, and it's called The Enlightenment from the Sacred Precinct. And it's one of the classical works on information literacy from the Islamic perspective, believe it or not. And this is it's a short book, but it actually discusses how to properly research and read as a Muslim. This is not like a polemic or anything. It actually discusses using this is an actual treatise by a classical scholar, Imam Ahmed ibn Lutfullah al-Mulawi, and it's called The Enlightenment from the Sacred Precinct, a manual on the art of reading. Okay, this is a very interesting read. I recommend buying this. And yeah, it's very fascinating how he goes through and he discusses how to read properly, how to define words properly, how to understand words properly, how to research things properly, how to look for proofs, et cetera, et cetera. It's very good. And it discusses how to be a good student, et cetera. So yeah, recommend it a lot. I do believe it's in Arabic, but this is the translated work. Okay. Obviously it's in Arabic. It was written originally in Arabic. Actually, yeah, there it is. The original Arabic text is actually in the book as well. So I do apologize. Forgot about that. So yes, the original Arabic text is also in the book as well. Okay, so please, recommended reading. Get this. We're going to be discussing it more in information literacy as well. So, all right then. Last but not least, a book that I truly recommend for everyone. It's very expensive though. If you can get it in PDF, get it in PDF. But I mean, just having it is also nice as well. The Compendium of Knowledge and Wisdom by Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali. This is a commentary on Imam Nawawi's Hadith collection. Is that correct? Yes, it is. This is a lovely book. It's extremely comprehensive. That's all I have to say. And it's one of the only translated works on the subject matter. And yeah, basically. The 40 Hadith, Ibn Rajab's editions. Like I said, I'm very tired, so I apologize if I don't get all the details right here. But I use this every day, actually. I look through it every single day to find nuggets of wisdom. It's really wonderful. Has so many references. It's very academic work. I mean, it's extremely well written and translated, and it's amazing to read. I mean, there's just so much stuff in here that you can take out of it. I mean, it's indispensable resource. If I were to recommend any book for Ramadan for you to read through, aside from the Quran, it would be this. It would be this book. Just reading through the commentaries of these hadith. Yeah, and it's just I can't believe how much information is in here. I'm just so impressed that the authors were able, that the translators were able to do this and even provide all the academic references. I mean, this must have taken a decade or so to do. I mean, it's just insane how wonderful this translation is. So please pick this. It is quite expensive. Yes. So if you can find it in PDF, do so. But I honestly, I would ask you to buy it because this in your library is awesome. This should be right next to, your hadith collections or in the Quran. Okay. So definitely recommend it. I'm a Maliki by fiqh, but I take inspiration and knowledge from all major scholars. And I have to tell you, this is probably the best commentary on hadith that I've ever read, at least up until this point in my life. So, okay. So that is it. Let's see, who is it? It's published by Turath Publishing. Okay. Which is in London. Yes. All right. Okay, day. So that was it. For those who asked about the previous book, Enlightenment from the Sacred Precinct, the Manual on the Art of Reading, which is also where I got the inspiration for the name of my course on information literacy, how to read. So this is inspired by this book. Like I said, we'll get into that more later. All right, then. So those are my recommendations for today. I have a lot more books to recommend in the near future. However, I just want to leave you with that because I have too many books. And next time I also include some fiction works that I think all of you would enjoy. And also, I think reading a lot of fiction helps to also increase our vocabulary, helps us to increase our ability to write and to communicate. The more that we read, especially fiction, I think, because fiction is really more about communication than other works, right? It really requires you to be able to sell an image to people, sell a story to people. So the author is required to communicate at a vastly superior level than most, I think, and to use words in a way that is much more artful. So I think that when you read fiction, it actually helps you to think better. It helps you to read better. It helps you to understand things better. So that's what we're going to be doing. I'm going to be showing you more fiction works in the future, classical works, not like, a lot of, not too much contemporary fiction, but a lot of classical works where people are much better writers, I think, personally. So that's it. I think, yeah, that's it. That's all I have. Any questions? Like, I have not finished Sheikh Abdul Hakim's book yet. I will, and after that, I will give you my thoughts and recommend it, inshallah. How do I make time to read? Well, reading is part of my busy schedule. So I think that's yeah. That's it. So I will let you all go. Thank you very much for your time. I hope this video was beneficial for you. And inshallah, I hope you pick up some of these books. I will try to leave links in the description box where you can purchase these works and the names of these works. Okay. And that's it. So thank you very much. JazakAllah Khayr. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.